Every problem on Airbnb you're going to encounter has to do with your search rank, reviews, or your pricing. I am going to teach you how to keep your calendar full year-round, like I do in every single market I'm in. I'm going to teach you how you can rank #1 in Airbnb search results. What does it take? And how can you convert those guests who land on your listing to actually make the booking? I'm going to teach you how to get 90% of your Airbnb guests to leave you a review. On Airbnb, it's 72%, the average. I'm going to get 18% more of your prior guests to leave you a 5-star review. Of those negative reviews you get, you're going to get some. I'm going to teach you how to get rid of them. You're going to learn a few of my most powerful Airbnb tips that I never share outside of my private program. And finally, you're going to learn how to price your listing. You're not going to think ever again, is my pricing correct? Can I earn more? My pricing strategy earns me 2 to 4 times the revenue with the same property in the same market. You're going to learn how finally to price your listing, no matter if you're in a big city, a small town, a vacation rental beach destination, or a mountain. My pricing strategy works no matter what. My name is Danny, and I'm going to be your instructor today, if you'll allow. My experience with Airbnb is pretty unique. I was first a guest in Santa Barbara, California in 2012. I worked there in 2013 as their 700th employee, less than 10% the size of the company is today. And then it got even more interesting. After my time at Airbnb, I started living in Airbnbs. I'm Airbnb's #1 guest in the whole world, more than 3,000 nights. I started my own property management company. I became an Airbnb investor. And then I wrote a couple books that you may or may not be familiar with back in 2019 and 2023. We're going to get details. If you give me your time, I will promise to you, you're going to be an expert in everything from online, that's what I call this, to offline, to pricing. This is going to be detailed. We're not going to just be covering general topics. We're going to dive deep, okay, on everything from search rank. Now, I call that online. There's the online and the offline. There's the big 3. What are the 3 things you can do most importantly? Why is text the most important part of your Airbnb listing? And then we've got hospitality. You see, here, not everything is within your control. We want to control what's within our control. Nearly everything is within our control here. Not everything is here, but what is, like amenities, for example, and how you respond to complaining guests, we're going to cover that in 2 parts. This is a big topic and one that most hosts don't get right. Stick around with me. You're going to want to learn what do I mean when I say the 10th review. It separates the good from the great Airbnb hosts. My pricing strategy is a 2-step pricing strategy. We're going to cover the basics and then customizations. The great thing about this strategy is once you learn it, you're not going to have any more questions because all of them are answered. If this is what's going on, then I do that. If this other thing is going on, then I do this. We are also going to cover direct bookings, whether or not you should do it when it makes sense. And if it doesn't make sense, maybe there's something that you should still do that's pretty easy. We're going to go over investing. This is probably the most important part of your whole Airbnb career. Where are you going to get in your market, your neighborhood, your micro neighborhood? I'm going to go over all of that so you are going to be certain that your next Airbnb is going to be your most profitable. We're going to start with online listing, but I want to tell you before we jump into that, there's a big misconception. So let me just get this out of the way. You don't have a search rank on Airbnb. That's because Airbnb search results are super dynamic. That means any 2 users are going to see vastly different results. So you cannot track your search rank. You can still do things to rank high in the vast majority of searches. We'll go over that. Now, the other reason is that Airbnb isn't like Google. We think of Google when we think search rank. There's a big difference in that Google only sees a limited portion. They see, does the user click? How often does the user click on that listing? How much time does the user stay on that page? Do they buy? Google might even see if they buy. Airbnb sees all that, and then they also see what was the guest's experience with this listing. So Airbnb sees the whole process. There's no escaping Airbnb. There are no tricks. You can't hide from Airbnb. They see everything. So are you ready to do this? Let's jump in. The big 3 of ranking high in Airbnb search are photos, title, and summary text, and you are going to learn how to optimize all three plus more in order to increase the conversion rate of your Airbnb, which is a metric that they track in the Insights dashboard. All of my optimizations have to do with how to increase your conversion rate. Now, we're first going to talk about photos. There's a few aspects to optimizing your photos. We're gonna go over your cover photo, your first 5 photos, your photo captions, your photo layout, and the quantity of photos you need. Now, number 1, the cover photo. This should be your best photo, the thing that separates you out from your competition. There's one thing to keep in mind, okay? It depends on your competition. Does all of your competition, is it a seaside beach vacation destination and everyone has a picture of their view and the design is white? That's no longer a selling point for you. This is very important because on P2, which is the page on Airbnb where we have the listings, but we also have the map. P3 is when we click on that listing. On P2, the cover photo takes up 80% of your listing's space. So we gotta get that right. Go onto your market and search, narrow down the map. Do all of the listings look the same, even though they all have gorgeous backyard pools? If they all have gorgeous backyard pools, that no longer becomes your cover photo. You need something else. The first 5 is tremendously important because that's about how many you get before the guest moves on. The first 5, you need to have different photos of different rooms. It could be anything. Just make sure you don't have 2 of the bedroom or 2 of any room, because a core concept is showing the guest as much information as quickly as possible. That's why your quantity of photos, you probably have too many photos. Airbnb would say, hey, put a photo of every angle of every room. No, that's not right. You need 1 angle of every room, maybe 2. You even don't need a photo of every room. For example, if you have 4 or 5 bedroom home, 4 or 5 bathrooms, and 2 or 3 or 4 of those bedrooms or bathrooms looks identical, you don't need to show them all. Take 1 out. Why? Because remember, conversion here. If you have 80 photos and I have optimized listings with 80, even 100 photos, guests are not going through all 100 photos. You love your Airbnb, you love every one of those photos. That's not true for the guest. You get 5 photos. If you capture the guest's interest on those 5 photos, you get 5 more photos. So make sure those first 5 are truly, truly important, especially on desktop where they're presented on P3 directly. Now, your order. I went back and forth on this, but in today's Airbnb world, the best way to do the order is from your best photo to your second best photo to your last photo, which is still your best photo. They've all got to be best. Now, how many? Quantity. If you have a studio or a 1-bedroom, you're going to have 12 to 15 photos. If you have a 4 or a 5-bedroom luxury mansion with a golf course and a bunch of extra amenities, you need no more than 35 photos. Remember, we're not showing the FPG everything. We don't need to. That's not right for conversion rate, right? We're showing the FPG just enough so that they make the booking. I'm going to repeat that. We're showing the FPG, pictures, even text, everything, just until they have enough to feel comfortable to know that your listing is correct for them and they're going to make the booking. And lastly, captions. The captions are used for one of 3 things. You are going to 1, place the guest in the space. Imagine yourself here. You're going to explain things that they can't see. Where does that back door open? Hey, make sure they see the desk in the back there. Is there an en-suite bathroom to the right? We also want to bring up reviews. Okay, 5, 6 words, a little review snippet. Go down and grab something from the review, bring it up, and put that in a couple of your photo captions. This is going to get you in the very top of your market in terms of photos, which is tremendously important. Let's move on to title. Title, amenities. Go to your title right now. We'll run some experiments during this mini course here. If you have specified the number of bedrooms or bathrooms, the location of the city, or an adjective like cozy, luxurious, spacious, delete all of those. All I want is amenity after amenity after amenity. You should be able to fit 4 to 6 amenities into your title. But watch out, you cannot put in the title what is also in your cover photo, okay? So there's a little bit of a connection here. If you have your cover photo as a hot tub, you're not going to put that in your title, because think of the guest flow, the reservation flow. Where's the guest attention going from step 1, step 2 to step 3? They're first have already seen your photos. Title is number 2. Even though the title is shown on P2, it's not highlighted, it's not bolded. In all likelihood, the guest is not seeing it. There's only about 20 characters shown. So they've already seen the photos, at least the first 5. And then they read the title, which is full of amenities that ideally you can't see. Do you offer early check-in or late checkout, luggage storage, digital lock, self check-in, 500 megabytes or 1 gig Wi-Fi, daily cleaning, breakfast, transport, anything extra? That's great for the title. Now next, summary text, bullet points. We'll go over the rest of the text in the very next section, but you want to bullet point out 4 to 8 of your most important things that you're offering the guest. The guest is thinking, okay, the price is $1,000 for 3 nights. What am I getting? Run another experiment. Go to any Airbnb market in the whole world. Click open 5 listings. 5 of 5 listings will have this ugly block text. Block text is just a bunch of words. We don't want that. The guest is not there to read a paragraph. And the other thing is, if you have a bunch of block text, your best amenities, the things that are most interesting to the guest, you're going to bury them in that block text. The guest is not reading that. Conversion rate going down. You also want to order it from most interesting to still interesting but slightly less interesting. And again, ideally, it's things that the guest can't see. Now, text is the most important section of your Airbnb. If a guest is reading your text, they're not yet sure. You've got them hooked, but they're not sure. Maybe they have 2 or 3 listings open and they want some more information to make them sure that your listing is right for them. So they've already seen the photos, that have already read the title, and then you sprinkle on 2 or 3 or 4 extra things that they didn't even know they're going to get. Case closed. They're booking your place. No chance, because the competition is not doing that. Now, what are we doing here? I want you to think of search rank. It's like marketing. Airbnb is so interesting because you're an entrepreneur. You're a small business owner. You're responsible for customer service. You're responsible for online reputation management. You're responsible for sales and marketing. So this is sales and marketing. You know what a funnel is? On Airbnb, there is a funnel, okay? And we start with impressions. How many times is your Airbnb listing shown to the FPG on P2? That's number 1. We got to nail that. If we're never shown, we're never going to get a booking. So that's number 1. How do we get more impressions? And then number 2, clicks. Okay, so we're showing impressions. It could be page 2 or page 3 or page 4, but now we want to be shown on page 1. Airbnb, by the way, tracks all this stuff in the Insights dashboard. I have another video where I go over my own stats. After we're showing on page 1, then we need to get more clicks. After we get clicks and the guest is on P3, then we get money. And then, of course, we got to make sure we get the reviews, but we'll go over there in a moment. We're not yet done with how to optimize your online listing to rank high and increase your conversion rate on Airbnb. Now, there's a really neat tool that actually tracks this, because look, let's imagine that you get a bunch of impressions. So you're above your competition. You're getting more impressions than your competition, but you're not getting as many clicks. Or let's say you're getting a lot of clicks, but you're not getting many bookings. So there's a bottleneck in that funnel that you have to correct. This tool is called IntelliHost, and they actually lay it out just like this. I actually love it. I use it myself. And in addition, they'll tell you, hey, you're getting a lot of impressions, but not a lot of clicks. Here's 10, 12 things you can do to increase your clicks. If you're curious about IntelliHost, I have an exclusive deal with viewers. You can find that in the description, or I have a video review where I do a deep dive on that tool. I've been doing Airbnb since 2012 when I made my first booking as a guest in Santa Barbara, California. In 2013, I became a host. That was the same year that they reintroduced Superhost. I can go into any market across the globe and be a top host. And I don't mean that to sound like I'm bragging. I just want to be more direct. I want to help you succeed at Airbnb. And these are the ancillary, the extra tricks and hacks that I've learned over these years to help me keep my edge over the competition in all of these markets. Here is where I tell you why you need to both respond to reviews, positive reviews, and how you can get negative reviews removed. Why you should be pet friendly, what is re-optimization. Let's just jump right in, shall we? You want to fill in all sections of your text because that tells the Airbnb algorithm this is a complete profile. This profile is 100% complete. Now, if you have a basic listing, then you might have trouble filling out all the sections. So use a CTA, saying that's just trying to get the guest to do something, trying to get them to reach out to you, trying to get them to save you to their wish list, whatever it happens to be. Every section needs to be filled out. If you want some of my CTAs, comment below and let me know. Now, pet friendly, another experiment. Go into your market, and anytime you're thinking of getting a new amenity, run this experiment. Go into your market, narrow down the map until there's less than 1,000 listings. That's the maximum that Airbnb shows on P2. And then select, let's say there's 900, select pet friendly or whatever amenity that is in question. If the resulting results drop by 90%, so from 900 to 90 or less, then it's probably a very good idea to add that amenity or that feature, that search feature to your Airbnb, because the demand is much higher than the supply. So I want you to look at these. CTA, pet friendly. And just before we move on to re-optimization, also think about it in this way. We are trying to expand the pool of guests. I call it the flexibility concept. And you have a lever. You can make your listing more restrictive or less restrictive. The less restrictive you make it, the greater, the wider the pool of guests that could book your listing. An easy example is pet friendly. If you click yes to pet friendly, however many guests are traveling with a pet, now they can book your listing. An easier example to think about it is you lower your price. As you lower your price, a greater portion of the booking guests are now, your listing is within their budget range. Obviously, we don't want to do that. Stick around with me to pricing. We don't want to lower our prices. We want to increase our flexibility in other areas. Now, a re-optimization is something that I do 2 or 3 times a year. Airbnb is constantly adding things in that you need to fill out. So go in every 2 or 3 times a year and go through your whole listing. It takes 5 minutes. Click the extra amenities that you have. Maybe change up some text, because not necessarily that's gonna make you rank higher, okay? Switching the last 2 photos, putting a dot at the end of a period, it has no effect on your search rank. It used to. It doesn't anymore. So stay up to date with your Airbnb knowledge on my channel so that you're not wasting your time doing these things. So the reason why we're going to re-optimize and reword our text is not because we think that alone is going to give us a search rank boost. It's because if I did that last 6 months ago, I probably can write something better. I can probably make it a little bit more concise. Something has probably changed where you need to rearrange the wordings. I want to tell you about why you should respond to positive reviews, how you should do that, and then how you can get negative reviews removed. You want to respond to positive reviews so that when you get a negative review, and you can't get it removed, you're not calling extra attention to the negative review. The length of your response from positive to negative is going to be equal. Now, in a positive review, this is especially important if there's a very long reviews that you have because you're a great host. FPGs are just going to be scanning for negative reviews. They're going to scan the first few words. Great listing. I love this host. Blah, blah, blah. Positive, positive, positive. They're going to be going down. They're going to miss some things. So I want you to take it out, make some cliff notes of it. Take out 5 to 6 words. I loved the standing desk. Whatever it happens to be, put that as the response. No hosts do this. 95% of hosts don't do this. So you're going to get a little extra attention from the FPG. More attention increases your conversion rate. The more time an FPG spends on your listing, statistically, they are more likely to book your listing. How do you get rid of a negative review? We all want to know that. I have gotten rid of dozens of negative reviews. It's hit or miss. Let me be honest. You're not going to be 100% at bat getting your negative reviews removed. But you can do some things to increase your chances. Basically, you need to get an employee of Airbnb Incorporated, not an employee working for the call center. If you get an employee working for the call center, they will send you a link that you can fill out. You want to speak to a human at Airbnb Incorporated because they have more ability to remove that negative review while you're talking with them. Now, review 2 policies on Airbnb, the review policy and the content policy. You're going to pick out one reason why that review should be removed, and you'll present that to the agent. If the guest complains during the reservation, and this isn't a surprise review, you cannot give the guest money in exchange for them not leaving a review or leaving a positive review. So let's just say, you say to the guest, hey, The guest complains. They say, refund wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. You say, hey, what kind of refund do you want? They say $100 would be nice. You say, okay, I'll give you $100 and you won't leave a review, or you leave a positive one. And they say, I won't leave a review. That's all you need. Okay, the guest has just asked for a refund and they said they won't leave you a review because of that refund. That review should always be taken down. Negative reviews are the result of mismanaged expectations. We're moving on to reviews here. Go to my profile, my public Airbnb profile. Look at my listings. You are going to see a 4.9 is the lowest I have. I often have a 4.99, even a 5.0. Ensure that whoever you're getting your Airbnb advice from, that they have good listings, that they walk the walk as well as talk the talk. I think I'm doing both. I put my listings out there. I want you to go and vet them. I am a great host. These are the strategies that I use. They're the same ones I'm going to teach you today. Now, before we get on, we've got to talk about something that you have control over, but most hosts don't focus on it, and that is design. A design is connected from offline to online. You're going to get more booking. Any two listings, the one with the better design always wins at every price point. So that's the online. The offline is when the guest actually goes there. Design isn't just about design. It's about function, lighting, and comfort. You're consciously thinking about your guest and how you can improve their experience at your Airbnb. I hire designers. I don't have that skill, unfortunately, or I buy existing Airbnbs that are already well designed. Later on, we're going to talk a little bit about my investing strategy. Now let's start with amenities. Amenities is one of those things that you have control over, full control over. Amenities also gives your guest something to write about in their review. Longer reviews means you rank higher on Airbnb search. But here's the thing. Let me give you an example. I just checked into an Airbnb here in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and there are no hangers for my shirts. There's no place to hang any of my shirts. I'm here for a month. Now that's what I discovered when I checked in. Later on, I'm cooking and I open up the drawer and there's a bunch of knives, dozens and dozens of knives. Every single knife is a steak knife. Now, if you're a cook, you understand that you can't slice an onion with a steak knife, or it's a little bit dangerous. Now, these are very specific things. There's dozens of other things that you need to provide, you may not think of. How do we know? It's very simple. Stay a night or two in your own Airbnb and use all the amenities. You will discover everything, or 90% of things, that you could improve to make the guest experience better. I sell an amenities checklist, but I also give it away for free on my program. If you're enjoying my video so far, I take each of these topics and I dive deeper in my members only program. I want you to give it a look after this video. Now, I break amenities down into two. There's basic. These are things that you must provide. And then there's optional. This depends on your value. What are you offering? Are you offering something super basic? Then maybe you don't need a variety of different knives. But if you want to offer something more luxurious and get the resulting higher occupancy and nightly rate, then maybe you do need to think about all of these different things. Now, that amenities checklist I mentioned earlier, it is by room. I want you to go by room in your house. So kitchen, let's do a few of these together. What is a common amenity in a kitchen? A blender, a can opener, a cutting board, pots and pans with tops. Now, what are you responsible for in the bedroom? The bedroom is very easy. You need a positive sleep experience. That means a blackout curtains, no noise, and temperature control. What about the bathroom? You need space to put your things. You need hot water, comfortable towels. Again, you can solve all of this stuff by just going to your Airbnb, staying in it for a night or two, and using all the amenities. Let's talk about cleaners. Your cleaner is so important to the success of your operation. Pay them the most you can, because they become much more than a cleaner. They can become your property manager. Their eyes are on your property all the time. They can report damage. They can send things back that the guest has forgotten. They can coordinate maintenance. If you don't, there's a sliding scale, okay? So with the cleaner, we've got time that you need to manage on the y-axis. The x-axis is the payment. The less you pay, the more you're going to have to manage this cleaner. If you're an individual Airbnb host with 1 or 2 or 3 listings, you're not gonna have the time to go and spot check this cleaner once a month. So what do? We pay a lot. That means we don't have to manage a lot. We pay a lot, we don't have to manage a lot. That's why I say pay more. I rather have my time substitute that for money. I'll pay you a great salary. That means you're more interested in keeping the job. That means you're more interested in following my instructions. And that means I get more of my time back. Now, surprise and delight. Actually, I want to go over PMS, property management software. Now, I have a video on how to identify what PMS is correct for you. But I'm going to tell you now how to do it. We're going to evaluate a PMS on 3 metrics: functionality, customer service, and price. Functionality is integrations. I want you to think before you go get a PMS or go to a new PMS, sit down and think, what do you want? You're probably going to a PMS because you want automated messages. Well, turns out all PMSs provide that on the basic level. Now think a little bit deeper. Does the guest have to put out your garbage on Sundays and take it back on Mondays? And so you want a automated message that goes out specifically on Sundays if there's a reservation? Okay, if that's what you want and that's gonna save you a lot of time, write that down. It doesn't have to be an exhaustive exercise. Write down 3 or 4 things that are specific to you. Do you have a particular brand of a digital lock and you want that to work with the PMS tool? Note that down and see if they have an integration. See if they have that functionality. The next thing is customer service. There is a million tools out there. I've already introduced you to a few. I want a PMS with a chat where I can ask someone to solve something for me and they go and they do it. You can get that from reviews online. And then the price. Is it within our budget? Some PMS, they say, they automatically charge you for 2 or 3. Some are just more expensive than others. The name brands are more expensive than the non-name brands. I have a bunch of reviews on different PMS tools on my YouTube channel. If there's another one you want me to review, just always let me know in the comments. Now, surprise and delight is kind of a hidden weapon with good hosts. A surprise and delight is something that you are surprising the guest with upon arrival. You are not mentioning it in your listing. What is a surprise and delight? I have a hot tub at one of my listings, and I provide jacuzzi bubbles for that hot tub. That's a small surprise and delight feature. I don't give welcome gifts. I give goodie bags upon departure. I don't advertise it. That's just a surprise and delight feature. I'm getting some goodwill just before these guests are about to leave a review. Think of one surprise and delight feature. If you're not sure, post it in the comments and I'll let you know what I think about it. By the way, before I move on, I have to mention something else about negative reviews. The reason why I always have a co-host or I always have someone in contact with the guest other than me is because of negative reviews. I have gotten a guest who was otherwise going to leave a negative review to not leave a review because I had this extra person, the cleaner, the co-host, the concierge, the security guy at the building, whoever it happens to be. Because it's so much easier for a guest to review negatively a screen, a host behind a screen, than a human person. So if something went wrong, I have that extra third party reach out to the guest and say, hey, I know this went wrong. Here's what we're gonna do to solve it, and maybe even offer them a discount on a future stay. Basically, you're letting the guests know, hey, if they leave a negative review, they're gonna be hurting not only the host, but this person, this human who they have contact with, who they might have their phone number. That goodie bag, by the way, if something went wrong, I now phrase that as, hey, I'm sorry that whatever that happened is, I'm sorry I didn't fill up the propane tank for the barbecue that one day, or the towels were dirty. I got something for you. Even though I was gonna give that to them anyways, here's a goodie bag for your departure. Really sorry, I hope you come back. We'll get that solved. The dirty sponge test is something I've developed to help you understand if there's room for improvement in your Airbnb operation. And it comes from a story I just had in a prior Airbnb. I stayed at as a guest. I was looking forward to it and I got there and I just noticed one thing after the other was not great. This was a very bad Airbnb, maybe a 3-star if I'm being generous. It just had gotten a 2-star review. Now this particular host actually recognized me and wrote me halfway through my stay. How oh, you're this guy. And I said, yeah. And she's like, oh, there's probably a lot to improve. And I was like, yeah, there's a lot to improve. I didn't give her feedback because she didn't ask. But the point is, she had a very bad Airbnb and she didn't know, even in light of getting a bad, poor review. So that made me realize, oh, okay, so maybe it's not so clear, it's not so cut and dry if you're a good or a bad host because of expectations. So if you're a host, your Airbnb needs to be ready as soon as you go live. So this host said, yeah, we're getting there, eventually we'll get there. And that's not how it works on Airbnb. You've got to have gotten there by the time you list on Airbnb. So go to your kitchen. If you have a dirty sponge, that means you are ripe for improvement. And the reason why I chose a dirty sponge, it's because it's one small thing that's representative of larger issues in your Airbnb operation. Don't take this piece of advice lightly. It has a giant effect on your Airbnb success. And the reason I know this is from being a guest and being in the situation where some stay doesn't go perfect and how the host reacts to me. Now, you're going to ask for feedback. I'm going to tell you how to do that in your all-important automated messages. Okay, you're going to ask for feedback. Sometimes the guest gives you feedback. In the Airbnb that I developed the dirty sponge test, there was no blender. And I consider blender a basic amenity that all listings should have. So I told the host, I said, hey, if you can, get a blender, that'd be great. And the host actually said, yeah, I'll get you a blender. Now, the next day, the blender she got me, and I know this because I saw it, was the absolute cheapest blender you could buy. This host doesn't have a great future on Airbnb. It's about the mindset. I'm going to cover the mindset at the very end, but you need to not be buying the absolute cheapest amenities for your guest, depending on your offer, remember. Now, Airbnb shows the average price on Airbnb. So the guest can change it. So this Airbnb, I was a little bit above average. So the offer should be a little bit above average. The blender shouldn't be the cheapest they can get. So for me, it doesn't make sense because you're gonna buy a blender once every 2 years, 3 years. Get the second cheapest blender. Now, going back to that feedback, ask for feedback. You're going to ask for feedback. Sometimes you're going to get feedback. If you get feedback, you're going to address it, and then you're going to ask for feedback. An example, another Airbnb I checked into, there was a big, beautiful monitor. And when I set up my computer, it wasn't working. I said, hey, host, can I get it to work somehow? He's like, I'll bring you another one. Now that was feedback given. I'll bring you another one. This host should have said, and you should say, is there anything else? So negative feedback is provided. You're going to ask for more feedback. Guest says this, okay, I'll do that, whatever that, I'll get you new towels. Is there anything else? You always want to be soliciting feedback because on the guest's side, if I ask for a blender and the host gets it to me, and then I realize there's no cutting board, and then I realize there's no proper knives, and then I realize there's no can opener, there's no strainer, am I really going to be that annoying guest and asking for all of these things that are basic amenities? No, I'm not, unless the host actually wants to improve and they say, hey, I'll get you that blender. Is there anything else? Anything else you notice that I could improve? How beautiful is that? On Airbnb, the guest is going to tell you what you need to do to improve. Switch that for long-term rental. The guest is likely not going to tell you what you need to improve. After 2 or 3 years and they move out and you realize you've got mold and there's structural damage, that's not ideal. So let's be grateful that the guest is doing that for us, and let's perpetualize, let's encourage the feedback loop. Now, automated messages. We have 9 automated messages. All reservations follow a reservation flow. It's a predictable pattern. What is the guest going to ask at what points in the reservation flow? And just before they're going to ask, let's provide them that information. About 3 days before they check in, the guest is generally going to ask, hey, wait, I haven't heard from the host. What's going on? Everything good? 4 days before check-in, we're going to send them a message. Here's your digital guidebook. The Wi-Fi is in there. How to check in. Check the parking instructions. Digital guidebook, a secret of the best hosts. This decreases your workload because the guests are going to ask the same questions over and over. So now the guest no longer has to ask you because it's in the digital guidebook, and it's going to improve the guest experience. An improving of the guest experience, whether it's a surprising delight feature, amenities that you provide, how extra cleanly your house is, all of that equals more 5-star reviews, which equal higher search rank. And then we're going to get to the money. We're going to start making $20, $40, $100,000 more than our competition, just like I do with my pricing strategy. But I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to cover more things. Automated messages. So the biggest thing with automated messages is you need to let the guests know at 3 points that they have chosen a 5-star Airbnb listing, that they're experiencing a 5-star stay, and if they're not, feedback, and then upon checkout, that you, the host, I will leave you, the guest, a 5-star review. So that's important. That's the checkout message. You need to, as a host, let the guests know that you're going to leave them a 5-star review, because sometimes the guest doesn't know. Hey, I asked for that blender. I asked for hangers and a computer laptop. And, I asked about the slow Wi-Fi. Was I an annoying guest? Are they going to leave me a bad review? I want to leave them a bad review then. Guests might think that. So tell them, hey, you were a great guest. I'm going to leave you a 5-star review. The auto messages are also going to increase your reviews by that 18%. Remember that I talked about? These messages are going to have a greater portion of guests who had a 5-star reservation who otherwise wouldn't have left a 5-star review. Now they're going to leave a 5-star review. So that when you get that 4-star review, your 5.0 turns into a 4.99 instead of a 4.85. This is what happens when you get 90% of your guests to review you. This is what happens when only 72% of your guests get to review you. Now there's a couple more things I want to go over. Friends and family discount. 10 days after the reservation, I send every guest, every good guest, a message that says, hey, you were a great guest. I want to extend some kind of a discount. It could be anything. I recommend you keep it general. Don't have too many requirements and specifications. It could be 5%, could be 15%, could be $200 off, could be a free night. Hey, you were a great guest. I want to extend a $200 coupon for you, any of your family, any of your friends coming to the city. That's why the guest ideally just remembers, okay, going back to Houston, going back to Medellin, going back to Ocean City, I have a discount with this prior host that I stayed at and I liked his space. What about if a friend says, hey, I'm going to Ocean City, Medellin, Houston. Oh, hey, I got a 10% off coupon code. Here it is. Just reach out to this listing. It was a great listing. You're going to generate 3-4 extra bonus reservations with this strategy. What about when the guest asks for a discount, who's never stayed there before? Well, then I have a specific message that I type out. I'm going to try to remember it now, but if you want the specific words, let me know in the comments. It says, due to high demand, I only offer discounts within a week of reservation. If you want to wait until a week before check-in, I'll send you a special offer. That's nicely saying no. Now keep in mind, if you're in slow season, then maybe you want to grab a discount. So we're eventually going to get past those times with this course, with my teachings that I'm hoping is super valuable to you. We're always going to have a full calendar. Stick with me to the pricing. Slow season strategy. How do we make sure that we're booked up at all times? Occupancy, high, slow season, busy season. There are ways to do that. You are going to earn 2 to 4 times more with my pricing strategy. The Belmonte Penthouse, you may have been familiar. If you haven't, typed this in on Google. It is one of my Airbnb listings. The owner was making $45,000. He had a property manager. I purchased that home and I did very minimal changes, almost nothing. I'm making $164,000 with that property every year. Most of that difference comes from my pricing strategy. There are 4 types of pricing strategies. One is one price all year round. That's what this property manager did. $500 all year round. That means their weekends were booked, all the weekends were booked, but they could have been booked for higher. And that means that none of the weekdays were booked. I am getting 95% occupancy, 94.5, something like that, with the Belmonte Penthouse. They were getting 8 days out of 30. That's the first type of, you don't want to be that. The next type is using Airbnb smart pricing. You probably already know, let's just move on. We're not using them. Now, the third type is manual adjustments. You think you know the market, you may know the market, you go in and you do manual adjustments. I know Airbnb hosts should do this, and that kind of works, but you really have to be stringent about going and checking it. I find that oftentimes they just kind of forget about it. Dynamic pricing is dynamic for a reason. There's changes going on every single day. So let's use a dynamic pricing tool. This is the 4th group of pricing strategies and the ones you want to be in. We want to use a pricing tool because that's going to help us get the most money for our Airbnb. If we're working on any particular Airbnb, and I have a service called Elevate Host Optimization, after that is implemented on your listing, it's the same strategy that I use. I work 1 hour per week per listing. That's 4 hours a month. So if I'm working 4 hours a month, and with my pricing strategy, I can make 4 times the amount. That means, is that obvious? So there's going to be 2 parts with this section. The first part is going to be the basics, step 1. Step 2 is customizations, which we use to counteract booking trends. So step 1, we're going to talk about base price, minimum, maximum, booking lead time, and booking targets. Now, I have a base price is what you charge on an average night in an average month. The base price affects every available calendar date in a different way. So it might add to it, it might subtract from it. So base price, average price of an average night in an average month. Your minimum is a combination, technically, of your fixed costs, insurance, mortgage, and your variable costs, utilities like electricity. There is only one scenario where a max price comes into play, and that is when you're in such a market where you can charge a lot more than the value that you provide. So you can charge a lot more in the short term, but you know that's going to result in negative reviews. And so you put a maximum price on there. 5% of the listings have to worry about that. Booking lead time is the average days in advance that your guests book. On Airbnb, generally, interestingly enough, around the world, it's kind of 30 days. I've seen some markets where it's 120 days. I've seen other markets where it's like 7 days. You can check that in the Airbnb Insights dashboard. Booking targets is mathematics. If we know that your booking lead time is 30 days, that means that we know that 50% of your bookings are coming from today up until 30 days. And the other 50% are coming 31 days into infinity. Generally, it's going to be 60 or 90 days into the future. Now, if we know that, then we want our first booking target and our main booking target, we want to be 50% occupied at 30 days into the future. What's beautiful about my pricing strategy is that you get 30 days up until your booking lead time. You get that amount into the future to correct, as opposed to looking this week and realizing, oh wow, I got a full week open. How do I get these prices booked? You got to lower your minimum. We want to avoid that strategy. We always want to avoid the minimum. The minimum comes into play during slow season, and I'll go over my slow season strategy and days of low demand. You know, you got a Tuesday open between a Monday and a Wednesday booking. That's a great minimum price when we want to use that. That's bonus income, bonus reviews, which is the #1 ranking factor on Airbnb. Number of reviews is the #1 ranking factor on Airbnb. So why are we doing this pricing strategy? Why should we hurt our brain to learn a new strategy? Is it worth it? It is worth it because of this. Here's occupancy and price, nightly rate. We want to get both high. We want to increase our nightly rate while also increasing our occupancy. That is our goal. I have proven that with myself, with the properties I manage, and with the properties who I do elevate host optimization for. So now you know step 1 of my pricing strategy. It mainly revolves around understanding your booking lead time and then developing a booking target. The booking target is always 50% of your booking lead time. If you've enjoyed this video, I want you to remember that I dive deeper on every one of these topics in my members only program. It's called Profitable Properties Program. Okay, let's move on to number 2 of my 2-step pricing strategy, customizations. What are they? When are we going to use them? How are we going to use them? Slow season looks a lot different for the best hosts in your market. In terms of occupancy, there is no such thing as a slow season, even with markets with extraordinary seasonality. We're going to discuss seasonality, we're going to discuss my slow season strategy, and we're going to discuss customizations, which we use customizations to counteract booking trends. What is a booking trend? A really simple example of a booking trend is if you look on your calendar and all of your weekends are booked up, none of your weekdays. That's a booking trend. So I want you to think booking trend, customization, booking trend, customization. Days are going by at my minimum and they're not getting booked. That's a booking trend. I don't like that. I want to change it. How do I apply a customization to that? The tool that I like, by the way, it's called Price Labs. Price Labs is the best tool out there. I test all of them, all of the major ones, some of the minor ones. I'm constantly testing them, and this is my favorite tool. This is the tool that I use to double and quadruple the money I make on the same exact Airbnb. I'm going to give you another example of my most recently purchased Airbnb when we talk about investment. If you're ready to give Price Labs a try, I have an exclusive deal for viewers of my program. Check the link in the description. Now, customizations. I already went over 2. Day of the week customization. That's if you're getting a lot of weekday bookings generally. Now, last minute discount. You want to do a gradual last minute discount. I'm going to go over this because it's super common. So remember this chart here, if we have, I'm going to do a new chart. Most hosts with a last minute discount, they say at 15 days, 20% off. At 10 days, another 10% off. And then another 10% off. That's not how real world supply and demand works. What you want to do, the demand slowly drops as we're getting into 0 days into the future. You want to emulate this. This is how your last minute discount should be. So that is going to be a gradual discount of 50% up until your booking lead time, whatever that is. And it will never go lower than your minimum. Now, I want to talk about places with extraordinary seasonality. We're talking about low season, 20%, high season, 100%. In that case, I have something called the slow season strategy, okay? And it goes like this. You have to think about your slow season 1 season in advance. So if I'm just entering busy season now, I'm thinking about the next slow season. Generally on these pricing tools, the price slightly goes up the further out we go. And if you have consistent seasonality, that's okay, that's great actually. But if you don't, then you need to make sure that the next slow season you're focused on in advance of your competition, because there are guests. FPGs are searching 60, 90, 100 a year into the future. They are. A proper slow season strategy scrapes up all those bonus reservations, so that when we get to the slow season, we've already got a half-filled calendar. Now, mind you, I did not say at full price. Our occupancy can be great the whole year round. Our nightly rate is going to jump up, double. That's key, double. Most hosts, when they're pricing their own listings, they may lower the price 20%, maybe 50%. No. On this listing here, I get a high of $1,100 and a low of $350. That is dynamic pricing. Airbnb, and generally when people manually do it, even if they know their market, they're not really jumping it up and bringing it down enough. Airbnb smart pricing, it would probably bring it, remember the general price of 500, it'd probably bring it 600 to 300. We don't want to use that. We're trying to maximize our occupancy. Airbnb is about heads and beds. They don't care that they're not maximizing your revenue. They want as many guests going to the platform. They want their conversion rate, they want to be 100%, just like you want your conversion rate to be 100%. So what if you have extreme seasonality? Then you need to go into Price Labs and you need to use seasonal profiles. Seasonal profiles or occupancy-based adjustments. Sometimes I run a free webinar where I go over just this section, the pricing section. And if you want to be on that webinar, go to my Instagram and follow me there, because that's where I announce it. Now, I'm gonna be honest with you. If you're in a market with extraordinary seasonality, you're going to have to spend more time on your pricing. It's more difficult, and it's a reason why, quite frankly, I avoid markets with extraordinary seasonality, because of the fact that it's a lot more difficult to price your listing. But also there's other things, like if there's extraordinary seasonality, that means probably the weather changes drastically. That requires a lot more maintenance of the house. But that is investing, and actually we are ready to dive into investing. Then we're going to talk about direct bookings, and then I'm going to wrap up everything for you, and in just a few words, at that time, turn you from a good to a great Airbnb host. I am making 30% ROI on my Airbnbs. So if I invested $1 million, whether that was in a single Airbnb or 10, I am getting back, after expenses, $300,000 in profit every single year. So my last purchase was for $210,000. I am making $60,000 per year. My expenses are $18,000. That means on this property, $42,000 per year. I put markets into 2 categories: undiscovered and discovered. Now, discovered are what you think of. Any cities that you think of right now, whether they're vacation cities or big cities, Los Angeles, New York, Tahoe, Toronto, those are discovered markets. Undiscovered markets, they can even be well known regionally, but this is where I focus on because of the relationship between supply and demand. I want to introduce this concept with a graphic because this is so important. When I talk to investors, a lot of them only take into account supply or demand. In this case, supply is the number of Airbnbs in the market and demand is the number of guests who want to make a reservation. All right, so we have discovered and undiscovered. Now we want to identify the relationship between supply and demand to understand where our dollars are going to be most wisely invested. All right, so we've got the X and the Y axis, number of Airbnbs, okay, that is otherwise known as the supply, and these are guests, or otherwise known as the demand. Now, in a discovered market, let's say that the supply, we have 10 Airbnbs and we have 100 reservations per year. In a discovered market, we know that the supply and the demand is a lot. So we're up here. That means 100 reservations, 10 Airbnbs. Each Airbnb can expect 10 reservations per year. Now, in an undiscovered market, there's a lot less supply. There's a lot fewer Airbnbs, which means a lot less competition. So let's say we've got 4. There's also a lot less demand. There's a lot fewer reservations happening in that market. So let's say there's 50. Actually, let's say there's 52. All right, so that brings us out here. That means in the undiscovered market, each Airbnb can expect 13 reservations. Now, here's the thing though. We're gonna optimize everything. So we're actually peeling away. Some listings are only going to get maybe 9 reservations. We're going to be getting 19 reservations based on all of my strategies, but also even if you didn't know my strategies, there's less competition in the undiscovered market, just like there's less competition in the local sports league, you know, the regional sports league. Okay, NBA, National Basketball Association, that's a discovered market. We've got a lot of fans going, but we've also got the best players. The competition is very high. Now, if we go to a European or an Asian league, it might be discovered in that region, but the competition is way less, as is the number of fans and the guests now. But we want to understand the relationship between those two things. And I have discovered that in undiscovered markets is generally going to be where you can make the most money. There's also generally less regulations and less risk of changing regulations in the future. Optimize Your B&B was the first book I wrote and published in 2019. It sold more than 50,000 copies, which to this day is shocking to know that. But I don't cover investing in this book. Investing is covered here in part 2, vacation rental market analysis. And I talk about how I look at this process, which is I start with a market, okay? I already told you about discovered and undiscovered, but how do we go further? What kind of markets do we want to invest in? So I think about where are the guests coming from? Is this where backpackers go before they go on some famous trail? Is it popular with windsurfers? Or maybe some medical tourism industry is big here? What is the demand? Why are people coming to this market? And I want you to expand your horizons. Don't just look at your market where you live or your region, because you might get the best in your region with my strategy, but if you open that up to a country or even the world, you're going to get the best in the country or the best in the world, which might be in your region, that might be the second best, but the best is going to net you an extra 40K or so. Okay, so as far as you can go out you want to widen your pool of potential investments. That's going to give you the best odds of making a good investment. Now we've got the market, or we've got a few markets. Now we go down to the neighborhood. We need to identify which neighborhoods in this city are the most profitable neighborhoods, which ones are up and coming. We need to generally go visit that city, is my recommendation. You can use data tools to help you, but I go over this in the book and some other videos. I'm not going to go into it right now so much, but data lies. You need to confirm any data you're relying on. You need to confirm that data. Now, the tool that I recommend and I use is called All the Rooms. Again, I've got an exclusive discount for viewers. Check the description. Once we identify a neighborhood, then I go back to Price Labs to identify the micro neighborhood. The micro neighborhood is a very specific area of a neighborhood. And why that area? Because that's the most profitable area. That's why we're choosing it. And this does a really good job of showing you where that area is. Now, At this point, we go to the real estate agent. We already know the market, we know the neighborhood, we know the micro neighborhood. Now we need to get actual listings. You can also use online platforms, and you want to run the numbers. Now I have 2 metrics that I go by. This is going to filter out 95% of potential investments, but we want that because we want to make a really good profitable investment. Now, my 5X rule says you're gonna have to estimate your revenue, and whatever that revenue estimate is, let's say it's 150,000, then you wanna multiply it by 5, and that is your purchase price. You will not purchase more than $750,000. Now, you go on to an online platform or you go to a real estate agent and you get some listings, you know what price you need to pay to make a profitable investment. This only takes into consideration revenue, though. We also want to take into consideration expenses. I usually do this first, and then I go and I create a real detailed profit and loss for the year, a revenue estimate including expenses, and that is my 2X rule. 2X means that when you create an estimate, you're going to create a low-end estimate and a reach estimate. Now, for this reach estimate, which is the maximum amount of money you can get, and by the way, with my strategy here, I estimated I would get between 125 and 155. Now, the first year, I got 152. The next one, 164. So this estimate process, all this works. You need to make sure that in your high-end revenue estimate, that is, you're gonna divide it by 12. Whatever that is, it's double the amount of monthly expenses. So in this same example, if your monthly expenses are 8,000, then a double of that is 16,000. Your revenue estimate on average should be $16,000 per month. You probably don't need a direct booking strategy. I have one. I'm gonna tell you when I think you might want to consider one, when not to consider one, and even if you don't have one, maybe there's 1 or 2 things you should still do that are easy anyways. The concept of direct booking got really big because of Airbnb being a poorly managed company. If you're a host watching this, you have called into Airbnb and you have been disgusted with how they have treated you. If you're a new Airbnb host, you will call into Airbnb and you will be disgusted with how they treat you. So a lot of hosts said, well, what if I get my own bookings? And so that got really big in 2021, 2022. A lot of companies sprung up. I have my own website. I documented that process here. It was not fun. And what I realized is most hosts don't need a direct booking strategy at all, really. Here's when you do. If you have a bunch of listings, 5 or more, in the same market, if you're going to get repeat guests, and if your Airbnb is so awesome that people are likely to spread the word without you doing anything, then you want to brand your listing. And branding is when you come up with a name, the Belmonte Penthouse. That's my listing. So if you type that on Google, I have the Google listing. I have the Instagram and the website and the YouTube and the Twitter and everything. So when you type that in, I'm up there. But those are the only 3 instances when you want that. The reason is because direct booking is not easy. It's difficult. It's going to take a lot of time, and it could be a full-time job. And that's not really why we're getting into Airbnb. Airbnb is one of the things we do to make a lot of money so that we can get our time back. We're not trying to give our time to a direct booking strategy, which doesn't really work. So an example of that. One way if you're doing a direct booking strategy, you need to understand, okay, Airbnb, I'm no longer getting bookings from Airbnb or Booking or VRBO. I need to create my own guests finding me. How do we do that? Well, we can write blog posts. So if someone searches coffee shops, Chicago, then maybe I come up. That's very unlikely. You might do paid advertising. Paid advertising is a profession. It is difficult. It's not easy. You're not just going to pay $5 for every lead and some of those leads are going to book you. No. Especially if you're in a discovered market, then who else is paying for advertising? Marriott, Hilton, all of these big hotels and small hotels alike, they have teams who are experts at that. So you're going to waste a lot of money and you're going to have to learn a lot more about that particular topic to do that. Okay, so SEO, search engine optimization, writing blogs, trying to rank high, that's doable, but it's really hard. Paid advertising, it's doable, but the learning curve is steep and it's expensive. Now, what about influencer? Don't do that. The only way that influencers work is if your place is awesome and they promote you anyways because it's so awesome. I have experience doing this. I'm speaking from experience. It didn't work. I've also spoken to other hosts who have done it. It has never worked. Never exchange a discount or a free stay for an influencer who is not going to get you any reservations at all. Now, the last one, social media, creating an Instagram, creating a YouTube, trying to get a big following. That is tremendously difficult. I'm telling you that firsthand experience here. If you're enjoying this, please give me a like on this video. By the way, I have asked you to help me with something about a month ago. Help me grow my channel, and you have done that. You have coming through, so thank you. And as my promise, I have started posting videos more frequently. I'm posting videos every 5 days. Once I hit 30,000 subscribers, I will start posting videos every 4 days, and so on. Thank you. Now, what should you do? You should get a Google listing. Go to Google, the Belmonte Penthouse, sign that up, and you have a Google list. It's super easy. You do it once, it takes 10 minutes. Okay, the other thing you should do is you should create an Instagram just because it's so super easy. And once you go and you sell your property, if you're selling it to an Airbnb host, you can say, hey, here, you're also going to get with this purchase, you know, my Instagram, which has 500 followers who you can promote to, or 1,000 followers, or maybe 5,000 followers, whatever that happens to be. Now, it's a low leverage strategy. It's not going to get you an extra $100,000 on your purchase price. It's just a little extra bonus, and it's so easy not to do. Post a picture every few weeks. Okay, so we're not doing influencers, paid marketing, SEO. The website is interesting because your PMS tool is going to offer you a website, but be careful, because if you ever change PMS, you're probably going to lose access to that website. So that's one of the things you might consider with functionality. Do you want to do direct booking? Does the PMS allow you to host that website on your own, so that if you leave them and don't use another PMS or switch PMS, you still have access to that website? Now, this is hard. There are companies that charge thousands of dollars to build this website for you, but it's something that requires constant maintenance. There's something called a booking widget, and it's also kind of a pain in the you-know-what. There's a bunch of other things you have to do. You know, you have to bring in your pricing from Price Labs, discounts. What about security deposits? What about extra insurances? So the website I do have, it's been a pain in the you-know-what. I don't recommend it unless you fit one of those 3 categories that I discussed earlier. Now, what should you do? You should collect emails and phone numbers from existing guests, especially if you have a large home, so you have guests who book, and if they bring visitors over. Now you're going to collect 2 times the amount of people who are making your reservation. There's a company called StayFi, and what they do is basically, when you go into Starbucks and you have to click on a few extra buttons to sign in, that's what they do. So you go in, there's no password for your Wi-Fi, they just have to enter their name and their email and their phone number optionally, and then you get their information. So in the future, you get to market to them. Now remember, this is only going to be useful if you have repeat guests anyways. Guests are coming back to your city over and over again. If your place is like recommendable, and if you have a bunch of Airbnbs, because if you collect it at property 1, well, and you only have 1 property, well, then it's booked. It's likely to be booked. But if you collect their information and you have 5 listings, okay, that one's booked, but here are 2 other listings that I have in this city. So you're more able to maximize this tool. We went over a lot here, but here's the thing. Most viewers aren't going to take any action. In fact, many of them have already moved on to their next task. So I want you to post in the comments what section you are going to work on first: pricing, offline hospitality, or how to rank high in search. If you want or feel you even need a community of other Airbnb hosts who are implementing my strategies, I hope you'll consider joining Profitable Properties program, and don't forget to introduce yourself to everybody on that forum thread as soon as you join. I want to end by talking a little bit about mindset, which is the crucial differentiating factor between good and great hosts. Now, I came up with this concept over 6 years ago. I don't want to do this, but editor, play a little bit of the clip.
Are you thinking in the short term? Are you thinking in the long term? If you're thinking in the short term, start to think in the long term. What are the decisions you are making today? What effects are they going to have in the future?
Okay, stop. That was slightly embarrassing. I was actually in Hong Kong recording that video, one of my first YouTube videos on this channel, and I wrote about my experience there actually in this book. Now I've turned that into an expanded blog post. It's Optimize My B&B's commandments. One of them is entrepreneurial mindset, and it goes like this. Think of problems like there are solutions. So a guest complains, it's never the guest's fault. I know that might sound bad sometimes, but you need to understand how, no matter how crazy the complaint is, that there is a solution. So you need to be a problem solver. That's the entrepreneurial mindset. Go check out that blog if you would like to read more about the mindset. In today's world, you can learn something in an afternoon and take a lifetime to master it. Most people just don't have the bandwidth to master something. They have commitments. A job, family, community, or religious commitments. But that's okay because that's what I'm here for. I do have the time. I travel the world living in Airbnbs and investing. I interact with other hosts and I develop strategies based on all of these experiences. So use me. Let me help you improve your Airbnb hosting as much as you can. I hope to see you in my program. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and don't be afraid to post a comment below. I interact with you there. I respond to almost every comment. Now remember to control what's within your control.